What is the cultural mandate? Welcome to the Seth Gruber Show today. We're going to dive into the first and second commandments ever given to human beings. The first things that humans were ever told to do as part of our humanity, as part of the fact that we're image bearers of God. What are those commandments? What do they mean? What is the cultural mandate? And what might it have to say about our culture, the role of the church in our crazy culture of death in America? And what if the answer to all of the insanity happening in our country and the division in the church is found in the first pages of Scripture, in the cultural mandate? Buckle up, you're in for a treat. I'm Seth Gruber, and this is the Seth Gruber Show. Welcome to the show today, guys. I have a really interesting, very simple, and profound thought for you. In 2024, with the election approaching and the insanity of our culture right now, what if Christians saw political engagement and political involvement as part of the very first commandment ever given to human beings? I know this is a trigger warning episode for all the Stephen Furticks, okay, and Andy Stanley's. Remember Andy Stanley's most recent book? I think it's called Not In It to Win It. Yes, the son of the famous Charles Stanley, okay, pastor, evangelist. Not in it to win it. Meaning, we're not in this world to win. We lose. Well, okay. Yes, we lose in the sense that, like, we're not going to inherit an earthly kingdom. We're going to inherit a heavenly kingdom. But the premise of his book is to say that here is your theological, biblical justification to abdicate from standing against evil, okay? Evil in America. The evil agenda that's sexualizing children, the evil agenda that's taking children away from their parents. Have you not seen this? There are literally dads. I've met some of them, by the way. Dads who are not allowed to see their kids, or they only get 50% visitation right because the mom is transing the minor, okay? Or third trimester abortions, or arresting pro-life sidewalk counselors. Or did you know that teenagers have had their breasts cut off in America? And that's been completely legal, and the parents have taken their own children to have their genitals mutilated. That's not a conservative talking point. That's it's not a lie, okay, just to rile up the base, to get you to vote for Trump or something stupid. No, this is actual evil that's happening in America. And for years, and increasingly in our polarized political climate, we hear arguments from people who are supposedly in the family of faith saying, this is not the role of the Christian. We should not be engaged in politics. Maybe at the local level, okay. Like maybe your city council, school board, I guess that's acceptable. But when it comes to the state level or the national level, we hear arguments, and have for a long, long time within Christian evangelicalism, that that's somehow idolatrous. Oh, and God forbid that you actually were out there campaigning for someone. Like if you were actually volunteering to help the, Ron DeSantis campaign or something like that. Like, oh my gosh, you've lost the gospel. You've confused the Great Commission with a political agenda, and it's all idolatrous now. You've lost your way. I mean, we've been hearing these arguments for literally decades, okay? What's funny, though, by the way, is that a lot of those people then get very vocal in criticizing the statements and policies of politicians on the right wing, but are strangely silent when those on the left wing are pushing completely evil, demonic, wicked things. Okay, the most recent example of this, by the way, was when the Biden administration declared Easter the transgender day of visibility. Do you remember this? It's like, oh my gosh. Which is like, by the way, it proves how theological the culture war is. And that's what we're about to get into. Okay, we're about to get into how actually the Bible and its first commandments tell us to be involved in all of these things. Anyways, the Biden administration goes, oh yeah, Easter, that's the transgender day of visibility, which should open up the eyes of every Christian to the demonic principalities and the spiritual warfare behind the culture war. Because Easter is the complete repudiation of trans Gnosticism. Because Easter says that the physical world matters. Easter is the resurrection of the God-man who took on humanity, who actually took on flesh. So he's fully God and fully man. That is to say, fully God and fully human with flesh, with a human body, with a physical body. And the Gnostics would have believed that a pure, perfect, undefiled deity would have never dirtied himself by taking on the physical world, which is this sort of like byproduct of an evil demigod, and it's all fallen and screwed up, and you can't trust the physical world, so focus on the spiritual and the metaphysical. Transgenderism, right? My authentic identity, my inward self. It's all metaphysical, things you can't see, right? They're trying to talk about the soul, and the body gets disregarded. The body gets demeaned. The body gets rejected. The body gets siphoned off. The body gets ignored as sort of just this random blob of physical atoms banging around in the universe. It means nothing. And yet Easter says, no, the physical world matters, and here is Jesus, the God-man, risen again with holes still in his hands, but in a perfected state. In a perfected state, but with the holes in his hands. Well, Jesus, why do you have the holes in your hands? Don't you misunderstood Gnosticism? In your perfected state, you should be completely perfect. You should just be a soul. And he still has a body and it still has imperfections in his hands, but he's in a perfected state. Easter's a complete repudiation of the demeaning of the physical world in the religion of transgenderism. So Biden declares Easter the transgender day of visibility. And big evangelicalism, and by that I kind of mean the Gospel Coalition, Russell Moore, David French, Christianity Today, Phil Vischer, Mr. VeggieTales, Mr. Bob Potato, David French, and all these people, just like so vocally loud in getting involved in political comments about political realities, when Trump comes out and sells a Bible with the Constitution in the back, they lost their mind. But you call Easter the transgender day of visibility, a demonic ideology that you're not your body, and that they're silent. That's kind of what I mean, okay? It's that the people who should be leading the church into engaging this culture of death only have something to say about pagans on the conservative side, but don't want to say anything about the priests of humanism on the left-wing side. So we actually have to get back in touch with what we've been mandated to do. And I wanted to share a very simple and profound thought with you. What if the cultural mandate, that is the first commandments in the Bible, are actually our commandment to get involved, not just politically, but in every sphere of influence? Do you know what the cultural mandate is? Be fruitful and multiply. Subdue the earth. What does the Bible mean when it says humans were given the responsibility to be fruitful, to multiply, and to subdue the earth? It's Genesis 1:28. The cultural mandate is the first commandments given to the first humans before sin and before the fall. Therefore, these commandments apply for all of time. For all of time. And that's why God gives the cultural mandate again after the fall. Listen to this. This is profound. This is what we've been tasked with doing. If you want to know, what's my identity? What's my calling? What am I here for? What am I supposed to be doing? Why did God create me? Why do I have a body? Why am I on this earth? How can I live out my identity and purpose in a fallen, sinful world? It's the cultural mandate. It's the first commandments given to the first human beings before sin ever enters the picture. That this is where we find the most dignity, the most value, the most meaning, shocker, by doing what we were told to do in the Edenic paradise. Now, I'm not saying this is how you get back into the garden. There's only one way to, quote unquote, get back into the garden to achieve that original state of innocence. That's through the cross. It's through forgiveness of sins. It's through the bloodshed of Christ. But it's this longing for this Edenic paradise, this unattainable peace that used to exist. And the commandments even then was have children, fill the earth, subdue the earth, exercise dominion is the phrase you've heard. So even after the fall, God tells Noah the same cultural commandment, the same cultural mandate. He says, so God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply. There it is, and fill the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth and on every bird of the air and on all that move on the earth and on all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs. I've given you all things. Everything's under your feet. So Nancy Pearcey, our great friend, puts it this way. She says, when we sin, we go off the track. When we are saved, God puts us back on the track. But what was that track? What were humans originally created to do? To fulfill the cultural mandate. What if pastors simply preached the cultural mandate as the biblical solution to our out-of-control culture of death? Don't confuse the gospel with obtaining power or the gospel with anything else, but allow the good news of the gospel to empower you to be influential in every sphere of society. Not every human can do that, but as the body of Christ united, we actually can. So in the Psalms, in Psalm 8, it says, you have made them rulers over the works of your hands. You have put everything under their feet. We have dominion over everything God has given us as human beings to steward. Mark Knoll wrote a book called The Scandal of the Evangelical Mind, and he asked this question. I thought it was beautiful. I wanted to share it with you. He says, who formed the world of nature, which provides the raw material for physical sciences? Who formed the universe of human interactions, which is the raw material of politics, economics, sociology, and history? Who is the source of all harmony, form, and narrative pattern, which is the raw material for art? Who is the source of the human mind, which is the raw material for philosophy and psychology? And who, moment by moment, maintains the connection between our minds and the world beyond our minds? God did. God does. The cultural mandate was meant to govern everything Adam and Eve would do and what we must do today. It is our calling. It is our mandate. It is our first commandment. So there's really two commandments in the cultural mandate. It's to be fruitful and multiply, or fill and increase the earth, and to then subdue the earth. So I want to look at these two commandments because we get a lot of comments, and I get a lot of questions on when we're traveling and speaking, saying I don't know how to get my pastor to wake up. I'm still going to a silent and weak church, maybe not completely woke and off the rails, but irrelevant to the culture. Not speaking to the issues, and certainly not mobilizing, inspiring, spurring their congregants on toward loving good deeds, to do something, to stop the crash course trajectory of our culture that seems to want to descend into hell as quickly as possible. Okay? Like, what should Christians be doing about this? Well, what if pastors were preaching the cultural mandate? To fill the earth, subdue it, exercise dominion. This is what God gave us to do. That necessarily touches on every realm, on every issue, on all of society. So what's the first command? Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. This has been paraphrased as saying exercise dominion, okay? Nancy Pearcey puts it this way. She says, filling the earth starts with the family. But as extended families grow, they become clans, then tribes, then villages, then cities, and finally nations and empires. Groups also form to address these specific needs. The village needs a school, a church, a government of some kind. People come together to sell the work of their hands in shops and marketplaces, and so on. Implied in the command to be fruitful is to develop the entire social world, all of the social institutions. It also includes the rules and principles that structure those institutions, laws and policies, treaties and constitutions. In other words, the cultural mandate assumes that we will build civilizations, institutions, laws, and do so in a way that honors God and his creation. Christians who want to honor God by obeying the first commandment ought to be the ones building everything. Our desire to build good things, honorable things, should motivate, animate, and empower us more than those who hate God. But unfortunately, it seems to have gone the other way around, hasn't it? Because what has happened? What has happened in Western civilization in America in the last hundred or so years? The left, the secularists, the globalists, the humanists have almost been laughably more effective in building institutions, laws, policies, and rules to advance evil than we have ever done to advance the good, the true, and the beautiful. The anti-God, anti-family, anti-children, anti-capitalism, anti-religion revolutionaries have been far, far, far more successful in fulfilling their twisted version of the cultural mandate than we have done in the last 100 years or so. And sadly, it seems like this has been this way for some time, actually. It takes a long time for bad ideas to become so popular and ascendant that they become completely applied and now assumed in our social communities, that then govern the philosophies of the minds of men who are elected in our constitutional republic, who draft the laws, who sign the laws. It takes a long time for those bad ideas to become so normalized in the culture and then start bearing bad fruit. So the only way for those kinds of horrible ideas to now dictate our public life in America is us, the church, to be silent, to tolerate those bad ideas, and to not push back, to not build anything ourselves, to not steward those institutions ourselves. You may be familiar with the 18th century philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, whose ideas fomented the French Revolution. Rousseau was no fan of the Christian faith, and he wrote about Christians he observed in his own day. And I want to read this to you because, unfortunately, it's quite an indictment against the saltlessness of Christians in America. The saltlessness. We've lost our saltiness. We're not preserving or conserving anything anymore. We're not building anything anymore. And this, unfortunately, is more than 250 years old. Okay, here's what he says. He says, I guess this was actually just shortly before the founding of America. He says, the country of Christian is not of this world. He does his duty indeed, but does it with profound indifference to the good or ill success of his cares. Provided he has nothing to reproach himself with, it matters little to him whether things go well or ill here on earth. If the state is prosperous, he hardly dares to share in the public happiness, for fear he may grow proud of his country's glory. If the state is languishing, he blesses the hand of God that is hard upon his people. If the power is abused by him who wields it, it is the scourge wherewith God punishes his children. There would be scruples about driving out the usurper. Public tranquility would have to be disturbed. Violence would have to be employed and blood spilt. All of this accords ill with Christian meekness. And after all, in this vale of sorrows, what does it matter whether we are free men or serfs? The essential thing is to get to heaven, and resignation is only an additional means of doing so. Christianity preaches only servitude and dependence, he says. Its spirit is so favorable to tyranny that it always profits by such a regime. True Christians are made to be slaves, and they know it and do not much mind. This short life counts for too little in their eyes. It's like, oh my gosh. This was written more than 250 years ago. And yet that could have been written about Christianity in the West today. Just look around you, okay, in our insane culture, at so-called Christian leaders, and by and large, you'll find one commonality. No one wants to fight. No one wants to contend. No one wants to raise a godly standard. No one wants to stand against this culture of death. But what happens when we refuse to exercise dominion for righteousness and a godly standard, when we stop filling the earth, which assumes building laws and governments and policies and communities, when we refuse to exercise dominion over the creation God has given us for the good, what happens? Guess what? I think you know the answer. The other side exercises dominion anyways. Yeah. R.J. Rushdoony, the father of the modern homeschool movement, put it better than maybe anyone else I've ever heard. He says, dominion does not disappear when a man renounces it. It is simply transferred to another party, perhaps to his wife, children, employer, or the state, where the individual surrenders his due dominion, where the family abdicates it, and the worker and employer reduce it. There, another party, usually the state, concentrates dominion. Where organized society surrenders power, the mob gains it proportionate to the surrender. The mob gains power proportionate to the surrender. In other words, to the same degree and percentage that we abdicate and let go of power, influence, and stewardship is the same degree or percentage that the other side will accrue the power that's been abdicated, and they will use it to advance a godless agenda, to wipe out the image of God, destroy children, sexualize them, destroy their innocence, redefine the family, call man a woman and woman a man, and let a boy rape a girl in a girl's bathroom because he's a woman now. The same degree that you abdicate will be the same degree that the other side accrues that power. So what do? Be faithful. Reassert your calling and your authority to be the stewards of the earth. To exercise dominion over the creation God has given you. The prophet Jeremiah understood this. When writing to the Israelites who were exiled in Babylon, he reminds them of the cultural mandate. In Jeremiah 29, 6-7, Jeremiah says, marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there. Do not decrease. Also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. Have lots of babies, get married, raise them, exercise dominion in the city I've sent you into exile, demand or seek or pray for the prosperity of the city, because in her prosperity you too shall find your prosperity. Okay. The cultural mandate. Herbert Schlossberg, in his great book, Idols for Destruction, says that the salt of people changed by the gospel must change the world. The salt of people changed by the gospel must change the world. Don't put your light under a bushel. If you've been changed, if you've been redeemed, if you've been made new, then contend for the good, the true, and the beautiful, because those were things created by God to glorify him, and you glorify him in how you steward the things given to you on this earth. Richard Pratt, in his book Design for Dignity, summed this up beautifully. He said, by filling and ruling over the world, we fulfill our true purpose in life. We reach the heights of dignity because we represent and extend the authority of the King of the universe. Right? We find dignity, we find fulfillment in representing the authority of Jesus by exercising authority over his creation and doing it in a way that honors him, right? Because the other side does have a twisted version of the cultural mandate. They have filled the earth, they've subdued it, they've put it under their foot. They've created things. They've built things out of the natural resources of the world that God created in the first place. And they've done so for wickedness. So the first commandment is be fruitful and multiply, increase in number, and fill the earth. But implied in that command is to develop the entire social world. Because as people have more babies and families grow, and extended families grow, and you have tribes and civilizations and nations and empires, they require institutions, governance, ideas, policies, laws, and rules to make those institutions flourish for the good. We'd like to thank our friends today at Every Life Diaper Company for sponsoring the Seth Gruber Show. Every Life Diaper is America's pro-life diaper company. It's really quite simple, okay? What you give your money to, you get more of, okay? So if you give money to pro-abortion, Marxist, anti-family like companies, guess what? You get more of that kind of junk, okay? So every major diaper company in America rhetorically or financially supports the abortion industry. So the baby industry that profits off of conservatives, because conservatives have more babies than non-conservative pro-lifers, we're funding the pro-abortion diaper company that then uses that money to stand for killing the babies in the womb, whose lives they profit off of by selling them diapers if they make it out of the womb alive. Can't make this stuff up. Help us rebuild a culture of life by defunding a culture of death. Fight with your wallet by supporting our sponsor at Every Life Diaper, everylife.com, the only pro-life diaper company in America. Me and my wife use it. Your nursery at your church should be using it. Your local pregnancy resource center should be using it. And your nieces, nephews, cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandkids should be using it as well. Everylife.com, promo code Seth10. That's Seth10. Seth10 for 10% off your first order. Everylife.com, promo code Seth10. We have a vision for the good. We know what the good, the true, and the beautiful is. We know what God's plan is for the flourishing of his own people. He gave us laws. He told us how to live. We need only live out the beauty of those truths and steward the institutions, laws, policies that determine whether we descend into chaos, destitution, and death, or whether we have a new birth of freedom. We preserve freedom and liberty. We ensure that your children can be taught and preach the gospel without being thrown in prison, that they can share the gospel with their friend at school and carry a Bible onto campus or a shirt that says Jesus is King without being expelled. These are things that Christians should be doing, and it necessarily touches on every aspect of our lives. But the church has not done that, and so everything's gone to poop. We're neglecting the cultural mandate, okay? We're not adding to the gospel. We're not saying at the White Rose Resistance, the fastest growing pro-life organization in America that I'm leading and our team is growing, we're not telling churches to do something other than what's found in the Bible. We're telling them, live out your identity, fulfill your mandate, obey your king, do what you've been told, experience the adventure of being used, and oppose evil. Stand for the good, and maybe God will stay his hand. Maybe God will show us mercy. But we will be judged by how we stewarded or refused to steward the things we've been given. If the parable of the talents has anything true to say about reality, then it has something to say about our engaging this world today. If refusing to invest and grow and steward your coin, right? Because remember the parable of the talents? He buries the coin in the earth. And then when the ruler comes back, he gives the coin back to him. And he says, I think he says that you'll be thrown out into utter darkness. I mean, it's a very gnarly thing that the guy who kept his talent, it's a coin, okay, and did nothing with it, had the harshest indictment of all. While those who grew what they were given or got interest on what they were given were blessed and given more authority, managing more money for their master. If that's true of money, why would it not be true of actual talents, of skills, and of the gift of all of creation, which was given to human beings to steward, to manage, to flourish, to improve, to embellish? If the parable of the talents has anything to say about reality, it certainly has something to say about what we do with the creation and earth we've been given, which assumes, like I said, civilizations, policies, laws, institutions, governments. But what the second commandment is to subdue the earth. Nancy Pearcey says the second command means to cultivate the earth's natural resources. The phrase covers any creative activity for harnessing the forces of nature, from farming to building houses, mining metals, inventing tools, and composing music. She says, picture in your mind a computer game like Civilization, where players build cities and create technologies, advancing from prehistory to modern times. God set human beings over the earth to be the stewards and cultivators of creation, to discover and delight in his handiwork. Cultivators and stewards, discovering and delighting in the creation and handiwork of our King. I want you to consider today the dangers presented by modern technologies, which were by and large created by and maintained by secular moral relativists and humanist revolutionaries whose only goal is to increase pleasure for themselves and to accrue lots of power in the process. Think about it. Social media, AI, Big Brother monitoring technology, banking and credit. All of these technologies that were created out of things provided by God in the natural world are now being built, managed for a wicked agenda. Because where were Christians? Where were we developing these things? Think about social media. Traffickers and pedophiles can easily access your children if you're dumb enough to let them use a smartphone on their own or give them one themselves. So many stories of traffickers and pedophiles and pimps accessing your children as minors, sexualizing them, meeting up with them, getting them involved in pornography or sex trafficking, okay, defiling them, ruining their innocence. Where are all the Christians who were building such things, subduing the earth? What about AI? Today, let's see, deep fake porn is now being made of children, celebrities, and even your next door neighbor if you so wish. What about Big Brother monitoring technology? Let's see, our entire life is being monitored and listened to. Our spending habits tracked, our political views and statements recorded, and our travel copiously monitored. All that needs to happen is for an unspoken or spoken agreement between the technocrats and the government to target Christians for hate speech, and the entire system can be weaponized against normal Americans in a heartbeat. What about banking and credit? Well, with the assistance of Big Brother, the autocrats and the technocrats can simply take away your money from your bank, because you don't, hardly any of us actually have cash in a safe. Okay, it's all at the bank. And they can cut you off from your credit card and using a credit card because of, your dangerous political and religious views, that pose a threat to the social fabric and the democratic process. What's my point? Why weren't Christians building all of those technologies? Why weren't Christians creating alternative companies as competition to these new powerful multi-billion-dollar enterprises? Why weren't we subduing the earth and stewarding these technologies to cultivate creation? What happens when God's people don't cultivate creation to honor God? Then others will cultivate creation to mock and challenge God. It's the cultural mandate. Subdue the earth. Cultivate the earth's natural resources, and from that, create things. Increase human flourishing. Honor God with the creative use of your hands, your talents, your minds, your skills. That's what the other side has done. They have cultivated the earth. They have built things. It's the cultural mandate upside down. They have not done it to advance human flourishing, to honor God. They've done it to mock God and to attack those that he has created. The cultural mandate is inclusive and comprehensive of everything. It's not just the Christian mandate. It's the human mandate. It's the commandment to the first humans. But it only flourishes in the realm of our faith to honor the creator of the natural world. Christians who refuse to engage politically are simply ignoring the cultural mandate, the very first commandment. They insist on a house mandate, or perhaps a church mandate, or even perhaps an evangelism mandate. But they grow awfully fearful and uncomfortable with the totality represented by the phrase cultural mandate. They want to shrink and minimize the breadth represented by the first and second commandment, to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth and to subdue the earth, to steward it, to exercise dominion over it. We are, in a real way, the kings and queens of the earth. Small k, small q. We are in charge of the creation that God has given us to steward and manage. So when it all goes down the gutter, when evil men are in every institution of power, it is an indictment and a judgment against Christians, against those tasked with stewarding the earth, for abdicating and allowing evil people to do what we were supposed to be doing all along. Douglas Wilson, one of my favorite pastors in Idaho, who was just on Tucker Carlson talking about the Christian nationalism title assigned to us by the left for Christians who just believe that like there are two genders and like Judeo-Christian worldview was the dominant worldview that founded this country, and like babies shouldn't be killed, like you're a Christian nationalist, whatever that means. And he addressed these kinds of people, I think, in one of his most brilliant replies. These people that don't want the totality of the cultural mandate. They don't want God's reign and dominion and authority over all of creation to be mirrored by his own people's involvement in this fallen world. Here's how he put it. He said, so the problem with the gospel-centered pietist, have you ever heard this phrase? I'm gospel-centered, gospel-centered. It's like, yeah, we should all be gospel-centered. But it's used as a way to ignore engaging other issues that they claim are not directly linked to the gospel. And this allows left-wing progressive quote-unquote Christians to say, well, you know, the abortion issue is not a gospel issue. Critical race theory is not a gospel issue. In other words, that the gospel doesn't touch on these other issues. So let's just keep the message of salvation, the gospel, center, and so we can agree to disagree on other issues. Whereas I would say, actually, the gospel speaks very clearly to those other issues. And those other issues that you say are not gospel issues, so that you can sneak in progressive ideologies and priorities into Christianity, are actually gospel issues. Okay, I digress. Douglas Wilson says, so the problem with the gospel-centered pietist is not that he is too pious. His problem is that he is not pious enough. His piety is kept in a pretty small box. It hasn't been outside in years. And not only does he try to keep his circle small enough to remain tidy, he polices others to make sure they keep their circles small as well. If any of his friends start showing signs of restiveness, they want the circumference to be enlarged, the circumference of stewardship and dominion. He worries aloud that they are actually trying to draw other circles elsewhere with other centers. In other words, you missed the gospel. He worries aloud that they are drifting away when they are only growing up. He fears they are falling behind when they are actually lapping him. It's very interesting. Douglas Wilson saying that it's actually the recognition and application of the cultural mandate with all of its breadth that is true Christianity lived out. It's because we've been changed by the good news of the gospel that we want to stand for the good, the true, and the beautiful in the public square, to withhold wickedness and to promote righteousness as a way to love our neighbor and future generations yet to be born. But if you show that large of a circumference in your public engagement of the culture with the gospel, you're called a Christian nationalist. Right? Which under the Biden administration a couple years ago, they said that Christian nationalism is sort of the real threat to freedom and democracy. It's these Christian nationalists who want to take us back to some kind of theocracy where we kill people if they don't become Christians or repent of their sins or some such nonsense. No, this is just the cultural mandate. What we don't steward for righteousness will be stewarded by someone else for wickedness and a godless agenda. There's no such thing as moral neutrality, okay? There's no such thing as a pluralistic society and a neutral public square. You know, a neutral public square, you know, where we agree to disagree. You know, where you want to chop off the 9-year-olds or let's say the 12, 13-year-olds phallic And I don't want to. And you want to chop off the breasts of the 15-year-old who thinks she's a boy, and you want taxpayer dollars to fund it, but I don't. And so somehow we're going to achieve this pluralistic society of all religions coexisting together in a neutral public square where no one's ideas are being forced onto anyone else, because this is America. Are you starting to sense yet in 2024, my friend, that there is no such thing as a neutral public square? Someone's religion and someone's morality will be the dominant one. It will dictate the terms of engagement. Someone's morality and religion will determine the laws on the books in America. It's either the religion of humanism, paganism, or the religion of Christianity. I want to finish with this, and I hope this was a helpful episode. I want you to share this with your friends, pastors, elders, who think that getting involved politically and rushing into the political realm is to get your hands dirty, to compromise your Christian witness in the public square, and to therefore forfeit your right to bear the name of Jesus Christ and proclaim the gospel, because you've mixed it up, you've dirtied it, the gospel, with political parties. Correct. Jesus is not a Republican or a Democrat. He's a king, he's a monarch, and he's coming back, so he is political in that sense. But we are still to get involved to steward the creation God has given us, to promote good ideas and not bad ideas, to make beautiful things and not ugly things, to punish evil and evildoers, and to incentivize and encourage people to do good things, to stay with their families, to raise their children. Don't kill people. Don't kill the baby in the womb, okay? Don't rape the kid, or we're going to cut your balls off and throw you in prison for life. Like, if we aren't forwarding the good, the true, and the beautiful, someone else will forward the ugly, the dangerous, and the evil. There's simply no other way about it. I wanted to end with this line. It's one of my favorite lines from Abraham Kuyper, the Dutch theologian, and I think it really captures everything. He says, "There is not a square inch in the whole domain of human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not scream mine." In other words, Jesus says, it's all mine anyways. So steward my creation to glorify me and create something beautiful out of what I have given you. It's all God's anyways. The gospel necessarily touches on everything. So go. Go, Christian, and fulfill the cultural mandate. Get married. Have babies, raise them in the fear and admonition of the Lord, teach them to be courageous, run for city council, give money to godly men and women running for public office, show up at school board meetings and scare the bejesus out of any of those left-wing, diddle the kids sexual revolutionaries by primarying every single one of them and stopping the sexualizing agenda of our children in America. Show up outside of abortion clinics and plead for mom to choose life. Put pressure on your elected representatives to stand for the right policies and ideas, or primary them and put godly men and women to back in to get elected. Preach the truth from the pulpit. Get engaged in your public square. Be about what the church was supposed to be about all along. Because when we don't progress into some liberal utopia. We regress back to more dangerous times and dangerous ideas that have always destroyed societies and civilizations and the innocent. The formula is quite simple, actually. We don't have to come up with a new strategy. We need to fulfill the cultural mandate, which says, get involved in all of it for me, your king, because I am coming back soon. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Seth Gruber Show. Head on over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Give us a rating and review. It really helps us reach more people. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday for new episodes. Subscribe at Rumble for if and when I'm ever digitally assassinated by the YouTube overlords. And on iTunes, give us 5 stars. Will you leave us a review? It helps more people see the show. Share this with your pastor if he is still weak, wimpy, and silent. And if you want to join the fastest growing pro-life organization in America to educate the public, discredit the opposition, and inspire a movement in the church in America to end the abortion holocaust, go to thewhiterose.life. thewhiterose.life, and sign up as an ally at $35 a month, and we equip you with a box to participate in Christian resistance. And at $70 a month, you join our book club. So we read a book and we talk about it live on Zoom once a month. It's super fun and equips you to stand for life. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.